Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. And welcome to this presentation on menopause mainly. But menopause is part of midlife and you might be at various stages in that journey. So I'm including midlife here as well. And we're specifically talking tonight about the emotional side of it. So it's a big topic, as you can imagine. And I wanted to start with the emotional part of it. So here we go. And just a disclaimer that this is not a prescription, not a diagnosis. I'm not diagnosing you. You're hopefully not self-diagnosing. It's for educational purposes only. So this is my gig. Menopause is my passion. And I have a message that I want to share and a reason why I'm doing this. And this is why tonight's presentation is important to me, because I'm getting to share that message. And fundamentally, it's about empowering the 50-year-old woman to change the world. Why not, right? We've got all this experience, all this life we've done. Once you're kind of not reproductive anymore, then this liberation opens up. Hopefully the kids are off your hands or you've got a bit of spare time, and whoosh, all this power and energy comes through. And I think that the 50s are the perfect time for lots of things. And I'm going to share more and more about that this evening. So just keep in mind that I'm going to have a couple of breaks through this evening where I can go back to chat and see what you're saying. So I can't see chat at the moment. So you'll have to type something in and then I'll get to see it when we do a little breather. So for those of you who are new to me, and there's a few names there that I don't recognize, I just want to introduce myself because it gives you a sense of where I'm coming from, my bias around all of this. And that will come through the whole way through. So I'm a midlife and menopause coach. And the reason that I'm that is, on the one hand, I have been a naturopath for 30 years. 1992, I graduated from Nature Care here in Sydney. And then I re-graduated. I went back and did it again, upgraded in 2013, 2014. Somewhere on my wall here is my 2 qualifications, as well as a few others. And then I became a credentialed life coach in the early 2000s, about 2005. Because that was when life coaching was coming out, and I was fascinated because being healthy is not just about what you do and knowing what to do, but it's about doing it and having healthy habits, and that can be tricky. I've studied aromatherapy and became a clinical aromatherapist and energetic medicine practitioner. The two were combined. So I don't do aromatherapy massage, I do aromatherapy medicine. And one of the things that I recommend as you're sitting here listening to me is that you grab an oil bottle if you have one nearby, preferably one that's a little bit stimulating rather than putting you to sleep. Anything with orange in it or lemon, citrus, they're beautiful. For peppermint will keep you awake. Not that I'm planning on boring you, but just in case it is later in the evening. And also this is my menopause lounge that you're in at the moment. So I've got a beverage. It's actually kombucha. So bring your water along or your cup of tea, or look, bring your wine if you really want to, don't mind. Anyway, more on that later. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, so some of you might run into me at Virgin Active at Norwest, because that's where I teach mainly yin yoga, and I teach meditation there, although with COVID that's been canned for the time being. I'm a chapter leader for the Weston A. Price Foundation, and if you're unfamiliar with the Weston A. Price Foundation, it is an organization that's based around nutrition, the WISE Traditions diet. So a lot of my nutritional knowledge, even though I've been a nutritionist for 30 years, a lot of what I follow right now is the WISE Traditions diet, which has a lot of diversity in it. And I'm a presenter and a wise woman educator. So that's really about ancient mysteries, women from the blood mysteries. And you may not know what that means, but I aim to share a bit more about that with you as we go along. So what we're covering, hopefully in the next, well, it's more like 65 minutes now, so that we've got some time at the end to chat or have a cuppa. So what we're going to cover is the difference between perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And there is actually premenopause as well. But largely we're talking about these three. How do you know which phase you're in? That would be nice. What's the link between hormones and emotional balance? So get ready for a bit of science there, ladies. And then emotions at midlife. We're going to have a little bit of, go into it in a little bit of depth. And then what you can do naturally to balance your hormones. There's things that unbalance your hormones and things that help them rebalance. And lots of those things. And mainly we're talking about foods tonight. Herbs, I'm happy to answer questions regarding herbs and various other things. If you have specific questions, pop them in the chat. I'm also going to talk to you about what you might do next after this webinar and how I might be able to help you if that's something that opens up for you and appeals to you. So first of all, I want to share with you my huge discovery. I'll share a bit more of my story in a minute, but I had this really sort of dark year in my life that things didn't go very well. You know how we have one of those years, not just one, but sometimes multiple throughout our lives. And coming out of that, I really discovered a passion for women's empowerment. And a couple of things opened up from there, including this event, outdoor conference and event called the Wise Women's Gathering. And it was at that event that I met this wonderful lady called Jane Hardwick Collins. Gosh, nearly had menopause memory there. And this lady is a former midwife. She's been a midwife nurse for a long, long time. And then she moved into sort of more nature-based and earth-based, systems and ways of looking at things. And what I learned from her is that menopause is not just a physical transition. It's not just the withdrawal of hormones from the body. It's not just a decline into aging, everything negative that we hear out in the world, but that it's actually a spiritual journey. And I'm going to read you something that really, really, really inspires me. But basically, it's really about this rite of passage. And a rite of passage is something we associate with traditional cultures way more than we do our own. But, puberty and the first period is a rite of passage. Having a baby is a rite of passage. Being born is a rite of passage. And the definition of a rite of passage is it's going from one status through this tumultuous time into another status. And that's exactly what menopause is. We're moving from being a reproductive woman through this no man's land for a while, and then into wild and wise woman. And so absolutely blew my mind when she talked about this and then correlated it with the seasons. So for example, when we're young and 0 to 10, for example, that's the spring phase of life. Being a late teen mother, that's the summer phase of life. And menopause and postmenopause is the autumn phase of life. And there's lots of things that correspond to that imagery. But let me share with you. Now I just need to find a way to move your Move your, let me just escape for a second so that I can move this out of the way. And that way I can read to you. All right. Can you see all that? Fantastic. So what menopause, in my mind, is really about. So these hormone-driven changes affect the brain. These are the withdrawal of estrogen. They give a woman a sharper eye for inequity and injustice, and a voice that insists on speaking up about them. In other words, they give a menopausal woman then a kind of wisdom and the courage to voice it. As the vision obscuring veil created by the hormones of reproduction, particularly estrogen, begins to lift, a woman's youthful fire and spirit are often rekindled, together with long sublimated desires and creative drives, a reclaiming of the self, if you like. Midlife fuels those drives with a volcanic energy that demands outlet. For many women, if not most, part of this reclamation process includes getting in touch with anger and perhaps blowing up at loved ones for the first time. The events that evoke anger are never new. What is new, however, is our willingness and energy to let that anger be acknowledged and expressed, both to ourselves and to others. This can be the first step towards much needed change in our lives, change that is often overdue. While being angry fits beautifully into the stereotype of the crazy menopausal woman, it can be an outward expression of the process going on within her soul, this reclaiming of self. Women might become tired of constantly waiting on her family. Angry outbursts might be her way of signaling to her family that she's past the cook, chauffeur, dishwasher stage of life. By Dr. Christiane Northrup, one of my inspirational role models. Oh my goodness, ladies, what do you think about that? Any comments? Any comments? Oh my goodness, that blew me away. That blew me away. Anyway, let's go back. So keep that in mind, that menopause isn't just withdrawing of estrogen and all of the symptoms that occur with that natural aging process. It's also a transition, a journey, a rite of passage. And here's a nice analogy. Menopause is a river you need to cross. On one bank, predictable cycles, regular flow, and mood reasonably consistent. Menopause is the other bank. And in order to cross the river, you have to jump into the river. There's no bridge over it, no tunnel under it, and no way around it. So it takes a bit of courage. So who is this information for? Who am I speaking to? Who is it that are my listeners, if you like? And are you one of these? This is for women who want relief from suffering and discomfort naturally. And, I don't have anything against HRT. It's a person's individual choice, but I know there's a lot of women who do not want to be on it, or they're on it and it's not working for them, and they're looking for alternatives that work. And that can be tricky. Finding something that works, you need to really understand what phase of the process that you're in. This information is for women who want to look their best, feel their best, and feel great at any age. It's to be seen and heard. So women who are over being invisible and want to be seen and heard, have a voice. Let that message, that fire, that volcanic injustice and inequality come through you. I hear from so many of the women that come to see me that they just want the ease and peace for themselves. They're sick of dieting. They're sick of struggling internally. They're sick of the stress. They're sick of being tired. They just want ease and peace. And I believe that this message that I'm sharing is for women who have a desire for emotional and spiritual growth. Now, I want to be honest with you. I want to be upfront and honest with you that much of the information that I'm sharing with you, especially when it comes to what you do about it, is stuff you already know. And some of it may be new, some of it may be a reminder, and some of it might clarify, because we have a ton of misinformation out there in the world about what is supposed to be healthy, especially when it comes to the diet. So I hope to clear up some of that and even bust a few myths. However, knowing it and doing it is a different thing. Now, for me personally, I've known for 30 years and maybe longer that eating chocolate is not a good thing. But knowing that makes no difference. I still have spent most of my adult life having something sweet after dinner. And I could blame my mum for giving us dessert when I was growing up. But I think that once you hit about 15, it's not your mum's fault anymore. And so, I don't know. I feel like chocolate's got me sometimes rather than I've got it, and I've probably had a little bit too much, which is probably why I've got this nice little jelly belly here. But you know, it's the majority of what you do that counts. It's sort of the 80%, the 80-20 rule. So that's what we're interested in. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that just knowing, you know, you need to do this and you need to do that makes it easy. It's not easy. It's not easy being healthy. Being healthy is actually quite droll. It's drudgery. It's the same thing every day. Drink water, exercise, eat well, relax, meditate every day. The same thing. Nothing really sexy about that. But it is really sexy what it can create. And the process is very simple. The basis of health is very simple. And often we know it intuitively. And some of our stress and our symptoms relate to ignoring what we actually know. We're not doing what we know. And then finally, that we do all need guidance at points along in the journey. You know, there's nothing wrong with reaching out and getting support. It's harder for women who are sort of independent, strong business women, bosses, you know, the type A type personality, much harder because you're used to being the one giving the directions. But I just want to say that especially when it comes to the emotional journey, you can't do that on your own. There's too much in your blind spot. It's too hard. And it's something I think us ladies, us sisters, are meant to come together and support each other on. And it's not an accident that most of the healers and support people out there are in fact women. And I'm gonna mention what I offer at the end, towards the end, in case that's something that you are interested. And I certainly did reach out. So I have, you know, I'm a big one for seeing. In fact, I've got an appointment with the acupuncturist tomorrow. It's a way for me to connect with other health professionals so that I've got people to refer to. But I get to the point where my self-management, there's this line where my own self-management ends and I need somebody else to help me. It's actually really comforting sometimes to go and hand myself over to someone to support me. And I think sometimes I might go to acupuncture or Bowen, or not so much chiropractic these days, but a life coach or something like that. Even more, it's more like my version of getting my nails done, because I come away feeling so great. And it hasn't always been that way. I alluded to the fact that I had pretty rotten year in 2016. And I believe now, looking back, that it was a major part of this menopausal transition, because what happens in your late 40s, when you start to reach the end, and something biological perhaps or psychological perhaps knows that you're coming to an end, that some phase of your life is coming to an end. And certainly it was the case for me. So I had this sense like I was running out of time, and I looked back over my life and thought, oh my gosh, what have I achieved? Nothing. That, it was a bit of a negative perspective. I've achieved nothing. I wanted to be married and I'm not married. I wanted to have children and I hadn't had any children. I wanted to have my own business and I was still working in corporate. I wanted to own my own home, and they seem quite simple things, but really major. I mean, I had other things that I certainly wasn't appreciating. There was this real perspective of what have I not achieved? And my ultimate assessment of myself was that I was a failure. And that sent me into a really dark place for quite a while. And maybe you'd call it, a breakdown. Certainly was a breakdown of the way I'd been thinking up to that time. It was an emptying out of control, and it was horrendous. It was horrible. That time where you think you're going to die. I was unwell. I was having a physical healing crisis, I suppose. There was something else going on about my life that was really horrible, but it left this real dark time. And I think the ultimate thing out of that was really a sense of an ego dying. I think it was the ego dying, or the ego changing status, because from that I realized that the way that I ran my life up to that point really was very ego driven. I wanted to achieve certain things so I could have certain things and have a house and have status and achieve. These things would make me happy. These things would give me status. Certainly, if I achieve these things, I'll have made it. And I wasn't successful in achieving those things by the time I was late 40s. And it was like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to do this for 30 years. It's not working. Something's not working. And I just was like, I do not know. I don't know. Don't know how to live my life. Don't know how to make a decision. Don't know. Completely empty. And with that, of course, came exhaustion and muscle fatigue and sore joints and hot flushes and, all kinds of menopause symptoms. But I did make my way out of that. My life has transformed quite considerably since then. I've been in my own business now for 2 years, and I have moved house. I don't own the house, but it's just absolute magical home that I absolutely adore. And so the story continues. I'm on my way to creating this awesome life. But the main thing is, and this is the real gift, this is the real gold here, is that my ego got a beating. I really let my ego go and started to be driven or guided way more by my heart. And so I can tell you right now that my joy factor has gone up hugely. And it's irregardless, or that's not actually a word, I believe. It's regardless of my circumstances. That doesn't mean I don't have bad days. I really do. but just less of them, and more appreciation and gratitude and joy in life. So it was my journey that led me to find my purpose, to find my passion, to have the courage to do all of this that I'm doing. And then lately, really choosing this space, this menopause space, as my thing. And that took me some time to acknowledge as well. All right, so let me just have a quick look at you guys and at the chat. So I feel like you're still with me. Hello, everyone. Awesome. Melissa's there. Mel's there. Another Mel. Kerry's there. Fantastic. Marina, Alexis, wonderful ladies. Thank you. Okay, so let me just have a quick look. Mel, I asked my mum when she began the change, and I am exactly on the same path as she chose HRT. But it did agree with her, so it will most likely be the same HRT was given at the time for mum. But no, we have more options. We certainly do. All right, so let me get my fluff out of my mouth. Hi, Kerry. All right, let's back to it. Let's get back to it. Okay, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. We often lump everything under the title menopause, and they're actually a little bit different. So let me explain it to you. Perimenopause is the process of change leading up to the menopause. Non-surgical menopause can start as early as your late 30s, and some people say even mid-30s, 35, or as late as your early 50s. The duration of perimenopause varies from person to person, but may last as little as a few months or as long as a number of years. Now, I don't actually agree with that official definition, because there's a distinction in my mind between that transition, that rite of passage that I was talking about, and what's happening hormonally. They're obviously connected, but I don't think anyone goes through that process in a couple of months. Some women get very, very few symptoms. In our culture, in the West, we have way, way higher percentage of people getting symptoms, and often very severe symptoms, through menopause and through perimenopause than in other cultures. And I'm not really going into that detail as to why tonight. Maybe I will in a future event. But it's this gentle, slow introduction into aging, biological aging, which is not a terrible thing. And that takes, fortunately, it doesn't happen overnight. Otherwise, we'd be, imagine you're going from a 25-year-old to a 55-year-old or a 70, like overnight. No, it doesn't happen like that. It's a gradual process, thank goodness. If you are in perimenopause, you still have your period. However, you may have irregular periods or other symptoms during this time. So some people say that perimenopause can be worse than actual menopause. I don't know, it depends. What one of my mentors, beautiful lady, what she says about menopause is that it's an endocrine, well, she calls it an endocrine screw up, but I call it an endocrine challenge. And your endocrine system is the system that has all of the glands in it, like the hormonal glands. So the thyroid and the pancreas and the adrenals and the ovaries and the pituitary is all part of the the endocrine system. And whatever you're predisposed to, because every menopause process is unique, what you're predisposed to is what you will experience in perimenopause and menopause. So if you're more of a thyroidy kind of person, you've had little weight issues or constipation issues or depression issues related to your thyroid, then that's what will come up. Or if it's PMS, then, and the symptoms associated with PMS, then that might come up for you. Or, you know, that kind of thing. If you're more adrenal, if you're more like high anxiety perhaps, or, you know, busy type A person, then exhaustion and anxiety, those might come up for you. So there are signs that you will have even in your early 40s as to how you might experience menopause. And so it's really, the sooner you can prepare yourself, the better, of course. As you age, the hormone levels decline because your ovaries stop functioning. If you have female reproductive organs, and some people have had them removed, hormones will play an important but often hidden role in keeping your body in its current state and healthy. Menopause does not require treatment unless symptoms are bothersome. Natural menopause. Now, natural menopause is actually officially 1 day in your lifetime. 1 day, and that day is 1 year after the last period. So in natural menopause, it is the spontaneous ending of menstruation not caused by disease or intervention such as surgery, chemotherapy, or pelvic radiation therapy. So I actually celebrated that 12 months after my last period. It was slightly off that because you're never quite sure if another one's going to come, but I celebrated it. I had a Harvest Queen ceremony, and that's another story for another day as well. But there was no way I was going into menopause through that rite of passage without having a celebration at the end of it. And it's one of the most profound things that I've done. It was amazing. Then we have surgical menopause, which takes place after both ovaries are surgically removed, causing immediate menopause to occur. And of course, that can happen at any age. Surgery to remove the uterus, known as a hysterectomy, does not cause menopause if the ovaries are still in place, although you won't menstruate. And then we have premature menopause, which is menopause that occurs before the age of 40. And it is considered by the medical profession to be cause unknown. I believe that it is a symptom of poor health and can be related to autoimmune diseases, immune problems, and other things, thyroiditis and other things that go on that mess with our hormones. So that's a definition there of our different phases. And now, how do you know which phase you're in? Well, that might have given you an idea of which phase you're in. Excuse me for a second. It's kombucha, in case you're wondering. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, are my hormones age appropriate? So having erratic periods at 48 is normal. Having erratic periods at 18 is not normal. So there's a sense of what is okay for me to have at my age. Now, if you're having flooding, that's not normal. That is a symptom of low progesterone, but not a normal one. So we need to kind of ask ourselves, are my symptoms just the normal process of menopause, or is something out of balance? And they are two different things. So keep that in mind. To find out, testing might be relevant. What testing does is it creates a baseline. It shows a comparison to healthy averages, which you can take with a grain of salt sometimes, but it can be very helpful. And it takes the guesswork out of treatment. So a lot of women think, you know, oh, I can just, what's good for menopause? Oh, I'll go to the health food store and I'll buy you know, I don't know, remifemin or something similar, something that's going to help. Now, some of these herbs work directly on the ovaries, and if the ovaries have shut down, that herb is not going to work. And sometimes the hormones are out of balance because the adrenals are so exhausted. So if you give the body something stimulating to try and make the ovaries work, but the body's exhausted, then that isn't going to work either, and it shouldn't, because you're depleted. And so maybe an adrenal herb might help. And a lot of the helpful herbs for menopause are actually adrenal herbs. They help restore energy levels to the whole entire body. And licorice root is probably one of those best ones. I was just studying licorice root in a masterclass today, so it's top of mind. It's one of many. But licorice tea, you can buy licorice tea. As long as you don't have high blood pressure, then don't take it. Licorice tea in a mix can be just lovely with some lemon balm or something like that. All right, so here are some of the testing options. You can go to your doctor. That's the first step, I would say, if you really want your hormones tested. But they don't test a lot. They might do your progesterone, your estrogen, maybe only one form of estrogen. And then they might do FSH and LH, which are your pituitary hormones, talking to the ovaries. They might do cortisol. And then, of course, they'll do iron and vitamin D and all those kind of things. So that's the first place to start. But if that hasn't been helpful, or you need a more refined understanding of your hormones, there are non-Medicare, non-doctor tests that you can do, functional tests. And some of them are saliva testing. Some of them are serum testing, so the blood, and some of them are urine. And they can give us a lot of extra information about what's going on for you and what phase you're in, and whether where you're at is normal for your age and for the phase that you're currently in. Sometimes that's really great to kind of get an understanding of, how come I'm blah, blah, blah. Why am I having this? I've been to the doctors, I've been to everyone, I don't know what's going on. Sometimes these tests can be great. Now, they're not free. Medicare does not cover these, and so you do need to invest a little in these in order to get the results. All right, so let's have a look at the typical typical symptoms that relate to emotions that correspond with the hormonal imbalance or hormonal fluctuations of menopause. And the most common one is mood swings, that outburst of anger, that snappy, sudden volcanic rage. That is very typical of perimenopause and menopause. And then it could be bursting into tears as well. So that's more of a sooky feeling, with estrogen that might do that to you. Irritability is a form of anger, depression, and anxiety. And we're going to go into those in a little bit of detail as we go on. Now, I'm going to keep going and then I'll get to the questions. So bear with me, because there's quite a bit of information for me to give to you. So just wanted to give you a little bit of background, because not many of us know this stuff, and it's a little bit sciencey, but you're intelligent women. So I want to give you some of the understanding that helps you work out why things work, why things don't work, and how we can refine what you're doing based on what's going on with your body. So all steroid hormones are derived from cholesterol. Cholesterol is absolutely critical nutrient for our bodies. Some of it comes through diet and the rest we make, as long as our liver is functioning properly. So cholesterol, you can see to the left of the screen, creates progesterone, and to the right of the screen, DHEA. And from progesterone, we get cortisol, and from DHEA we get testosterone, and from testosterone we get estrogen. That's like as simple as it gets, and it is way, way more confusing and way more complicated than that. So I'll just give you another look. This is another graphic illustrating the production of, up on the top left, cholesterol, your starting material for these steroidal hormones. And steroidal hormones are different to other protein hormones because they have to go into the inside of the cell. So they have to be fat soluble to get through the cell membrane, whereas the other ones don't. And so we have here at the top there, pregnenolone, starting material for all our hormones. Right down to the bottom, we've got aldosterone, which regulates our minerals, cortisone, that regulates our glucose, and dihydrotestosterone, or testosterone, which relates to our reproductive hormones. So, it's never one hormone, and that's one of the limitations of the medical approach, which likes to break things down into one single cause. I mean, I would love it if it was that simple, but our whole endocrine system works together. They're a family, or as my mentor calls it, a sisterhood, where one hormone or one gland knows what's going on with the rest. They all work in harmony together. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail as we go just through this next section. So which hormones to blame for my menopause? Well, they can be hormones, and then there can be things that affect the hormones. So even with this slide giving us an idea of some of the reasons why we might have our symptoms, even this is not comprehensive. So, for example, you're looking at mood swings might be due to low progesterone, or low progesterone relative to estrogen. If estrogen's too high, and that's the case for many, many women, then your progesterone may not be, it may be normal, but relative to estrogen, it might be really low. Low estrogen or fluctuations of estrogen lead to that hot flush and night sweats. Low testosterone can take away our muscle mass. That's more in non-menopausal states, and in women who are, men who lose testosterone for whatever reason. And then we have high cortisol. Most of us run on cortisol, and related to that is adrenaline, drinking too much coffee, eating too much sugar. These things elevate adrenaline and create this stress state in the body, and that can contribute to insomnia, sugar cravings, poor sleep, and so on. Low cortisol, though, is the result of high cortisol that's just run out, and that's where you get the absolute fatigue, can't get off the bed sort of thing. Neurotransmitters are our brain chemicals. They can result in a drop due to low progesterone or low estrogen. And then thyroid imbalance definitely has a significant contribution to our symptoms as well. It regulates our temperature. It regulates how quickly our bowels work. It relates to our weight. So having really good thyroid function is super important. And then vitamin D. Vitamin D is also a hormone. So which hormone is responsible? Well, low progesterone gives you low GABA, and GABA is one of our brain chemicals, gives you insomnia and anxiety. So one possible cause of your anxiety might be low progesterone. All right. Whereas here we have high cortisol leading to depression, mood swings, irritability. High cortisol can lead to low thyroid hormone because they compete, or low neurotransmitters in the brain. And so your mood swings might be due to your thyroid, or it might be due to your adrenals that are secreting too much cortisol. because you're always under the pump. And then similarly with low estrogen can be the culprit for mood swings and for depression. It's not that easy though. It's not that simple. You could have depression for other reasons as well. Here you'll see on this slide, you can see at the top there, that's what happens to our hormones during a period or a cycle, a 28-day cycle. And you'll see the blue there is our LH right in the middle. It goes super high, and our FSH also gets elevated. And then when you look at menopause and postmenopause, though, that LH and FSH go up and stay high. You don't hear about that story very often. We know what estrogen does to our bodies and progesterone, but we don't understand very well what these elevated FSH and LH doing for the postmenopausal woman. And what I've learned is that they're very, very correlated with the pituitary gland and the pineal gland and wisdom, insight, and intuition. And they are three qualities that certainly open up postmenopausally. So anxiety or overwhelm can be due to low progesterone, but it could also be emotional, the whole prospect of facing aging, which many of us do not like. Our culture does not honour the aging woman at all. And we are stepping into that even unconsciously, not wanting it, not embracing it. And it can also be a spiritual anxiety, and we have this inner desire for change, which we might be ignoring, and that can be very stressful on the body. The disconnect or the misalignment in our life can be very unsettling, and that can create anxiety because we just can't, it's like, I don't know who I am anymore. I just want to leave my kids and leave my husband and go and paint, or, what's happening to me. It can be very anxiety producing. Of course, the famous memory. Now that can be brain fog, which is more a toxicity of the body. It's more about, too much sugar and the insulin fog. But it can also be just, I think, because the brain is really rewiring and those hormones are all changing. I actually haven't worked out why we have poor memory recall at this time. One of my theories is that we're becoming a little bit more spiritual and details are not so important. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. It could be not true. There's no proof. And then depression. Feeling vulnerable. Feeling vulnerable is an awful feeling that can produce anxiety. It can produce anger, and anger that goes on long enough can become depression. Suppressed emotions can become depression. Suppressed joy can become depression. Not expressing our love can become depression. And so, it's chicken or egg. Is it us creating our low hormones that then results in depression, or is it the hormones creating the depression, or you get what I'm saying? So chicken or egg, but it's very uncomfortable, which is why so many people resort to antidepressants and find their comfort in antidepressants. Apparently, according to a statistic that I read recently, 2/3 of antidepressants are prescribed to women, and typically they are in their 50s and 60s, which is a little bit sad, really, because we really want to be able to feel our feelings in order to cultivate the emotional intelligence that we need to be empowered by that emotional feedback that we're getting. Emotions are feedback that we're on the right track. When we're on the right track in our lives, we have joy. When we're off track, we feel yucky. And so if you're not feeling any of that, it's really hard to guide yourself to go where you need to go. But also low serotonin. And low serotonin can occur because of poor gut health, because 80% of serotonin is produced by the gut bacteria. Low thyroid is also associated with depression, and as is low vitamin D. Angry cat. So angry is very typical of the perimenopausal woman, less so perhaps of postmenopause, but it's a real frustration and irritability and snappiness and, just get it yourself. That kind of short fuse that it is very normal. I mean, it's easy to laugh about, but when you're in it, it's not really fun, especially for your family. It can be hot under the collar, and this is not just my own experience, but my research has shown me that you can have an emotional charge, an emotional anger, and that can turn into a hot flush. So one of the causes of hot flushes is emotional anger. Well, anger. Poor blood sugar management and unexpressed emotions can also contribute to not just anger, but anxiety as well. Another key symptom is low motivation, and that corresponds with low dopamine. Dopamine is our brain chemical that relates to reward. That's pretty much why we eat chocolate, because chocolate increases dopamine, as does alcohol and drugs and gambling and sex and shopping. Anything that's kind of addictive, it gives us, even the to-do list, ticking things off the to-do list, every time we have a little win, it elevates our dopamine. Possibly artificially. And so when we have when it kind of drops and we are low, we can get a craving, we can fuel an addiction, we can, if we don't get those things, then we can get either like, I just can't be bothered. Just leave me alone, I can't be bothered. Or depression. And low libido is associated with low dopamine. More chocolate, right? And definitely fatigue. Lots of things associated, just about everything on the planet when it comes to our health, if it's not going well, ends up with fatigue. Fatigue is a really good sign that there's something not quite right. And then there's the consequences of all these things. And we need to think about this, because we are deciding whether or not to drink coffee. We're deciding whether or not to drink alcohol, or how regularly to drink it. We're deciding whether or not to eat that cake or have that healthy meal. And so as grown-ups, and I'm speaking to you here as grown-ups, when we choose the behavior, we also choose the consequences. And hey, it's not me who said that, it's Dr. Phil, right? But it's really important to get that when you choose the thing, you choose what comes with it as well. And so I just want to briefly mention some of the typical consequences that occur at midlife and menopause. And some of these are triggers for people. So just be wary of that. Relationship conflict, absolutely huge. So the woman's losing her estrogen, the man's losing his testosterone, the woman's getting fierier and the man's getting softer. The woman wants to go out of the home, the man wants to come into the home. He's kind of been out in the world all his life. He's more wanting to come and be a bit more of a homebody. They're generalizations, but that, oh my goodness, that creates conflict. And if you don't have an idea of what's going on, which most of us don't, because how many of us learned about this in high school? None of us, or since, none of us. Bang, we separate. And I think way too soon. I think my goal is to give people more knowledge so that they can navigate that relationship conflict way better, because it's much better to have an intact relationship through this than to be on your own, especially if you've got kids and you're financially responsible for them. It's very hard for a lot of women, really hard. Now, that's not saying that, I'm not saying that if you're in a situation where you need to separate, that you don't. I absolutely believe there's circumstances where that's very appropriate, but I also know that it seems like a good idea sometimes because we have no other skills to do it any differently. So hence my passion for sharing this message. Divorce. The average age of divorce is around mid-40s, and that has to be related to some degree in what's going on for the woman hormonally. Just a trigger alert here. I just want you to know, because we need to know these things, that the high suicide rate for women is at age 45, it's meant to be, to 49. And I'm not surprised. What happens to a woman at that time can be deeply disturbing, deeply unsettling. And the second highest age range for suicide is 50 to 54. Did you know that? That's terrible. That's a statistic we want to do something about. That's women need support. Okay. Our breath break. I'm going to take a breath break, and I'm going to stop sharing and look at your messages in the chat. Hopefully I can understand it relating back to when I spoke about it. Karen's 57 and just starting to get miss some periods. Yes. Well, the estrogens in our environment have impacted our hormones. So we have many xenoestrogens in our environment. Even women who are taking the pill, weeing out all of that estrogen, some of that ends up in our food chain, as we know with fish that are, looking a bit strange these days. But also if you're overweight, your fat around the belly particularly will make its own hormones. And so not good hormones either. And so sometimes that keeps us reproductive, because they're often estrogenic type of growth hormones, and that can mean that we go into menopause later as well. But for some people, it's just genetic. Some people, that's what happens. Mel says, I remember the day my GP told me I was in perimenopause. I cried all the way home. Oh my goodness. I know in our culture, we have such a frightening perspective on it, that I'm not surprised that women kind of freak out. Dipster's having lollies. I'm sure that related to a comment that I made at the time. Yes, sugar, something like that, maybe after dinner. Rani is having a hot flush. Yes, they're not so bad. Karen says, so many tests. How do you know that everything is covered when the doctor does the test request? Well, you don't. No test is comprehensive. Every test has its ups and its pros and cons. That's why sometimes you have to do multiple tests. No, lockdown doesn't help at all. It's although for some people it's they're exercising more. Some people are exercising less. Siemens must be perimenopausal. Nita, sorry, I said that wrong. She says, shocking facts, they are. And Kerry embraced it. Yeah, so did I. All right, so let me just pop that chat away again, and let's go a little bit further into it. I think we're coming up to our 1 hour, so we've got about 15 minutes left, I think. Let's talk a little bit about what you can do, the dietary and lifestyle recommendations. And I haven't put a lot in here about herbs or specific superfoods, or I haven't put in like bark flowers and essences and homeopathics. I haven't really gone into a lot of detail with that, but just know there's a ton of other things available to you as well. Herbs are brilliant. They're one of the best things for hormonal regulation. Oh, just to share with you a story. This is one of my clients who is in her 40s, early 40s. The model that she most, or the celebrity that she most reminds me of, because obviously I can't put a picture of her there, is tall and lean and blonde. And she was underweight, actually, very low energy, very difficult to focus. She had terrible gut issues, which is partly why she didn't eat enough. Sugar cravings, because her body was starving. She was anxious and moody, and she was underweight, as I mentioned. I was able to do just her blood tests from her doctors, and that showed low protein, low white cell count, which relates to your immunity, low vitamin D, and her liver enzymes were raised, indicating that her liver was unhappy. So just a simple I might do that differently these days, but some kind of multi is often very supportive. A personalized herb mix. We got her to eat more, and particularly to eat more protein, and particularly bone broths, because it's liquid protein, very easy to digest and easy when people have gut issues to absorb that protein. Sometimes I'll give a digestive enzyme as well, because that can be one of the causes of gut issues, low digestive enzymes. And a low gluten diet, because she just had so much gas. She came twice. She had 4 kids, so she tried to get here more often, but it never really happened. So over 6 months, she ended up being here for 3 visits, and she was just feeling way better. Her energy still had a way to go. I think she still had some steps to go, which, because she only came 3 times, we didn't really get to. But she also had a real realization that she wasn't taking good enough care of herself, and she needed to do that. And another one, just a lady in her late 40s now, perimenopausal, with 1 child. The celebrity that she most reminds me of is this lady, Holly Hunter. And her energy was through the floor, 5 out of 10. Well, I suppose it can get lower, but that's not great for a mum who's working full time and in a relationship. It's not great. She was stressed, as you can imagine, depressed. She had high blood pressure, so I had to be careful with her herbs. And she smoked because she was stressed, and she had gut issues as well. She occurred to me as somebody who might have this genetic predisposition called pyroluria, and we tested for that, and she was positive. She was able to download through speaking, start yoga, reduce sugar, add some zinc and other things into her supplement regimes, personalized herbs, which is usually what I give people, either in tablet form or in liquid form, and magnesium. One of the best minerals for menopause is magnesium. And the outcome was that she had a clearer head, better thinking, and better digestion. And I referred her to for some career coaching and life coaching. All right, another breath. I'm going to give you a few more hints and tips around dietary and lifestyle recommendations. But before I did that, I just wanted to take a moment to let you know something that might be of interest to you. And, you know, there's a ton of stuff that we're talking about tonight, and I hope you're taking notes. It is being recorded, so you will get the recording, but lots of information, and we're about to go into even more information about things that you can do and why as well. And it can be quite overwhelming, and you might have already started this process and think, well, I've done some of those things, I just don't know anymore what I need to do, or I feel like I'm doing all the right things, it's not working. Or I've been to my doctor and I've been to a specialist and they say there's nothing they can do, and so I'm looking for something else. And so I just want to give you an idea of what I offer and how that might be helpful for you. And especially for tonight, I've created this lifestyle coaching kickstart package, which is health and wellness support for you throughout midlife and menopause. And what it is, what it'll give you is a refresh, so your habits can be kick-started and you can regain your energy. Energy is the biggest thing. If you don't have the energy, then you can't be bothered cooking for yourself, you can't be bothered exercising, you can't be bothered. And so energy is one of the major complaints that women have at midlife, and one of the first things to correct. Secondly, you get to nourish your body for hormone balance, and that's got a lot to do with your diet generally, and then specifically superfoods and other nutrients and herbs that can support that. And then the beginning of your mindset or emotional journey, this coming and getting this addressed can be the start of that process as well. It's an opportunity to be guided on a path to well-being and purpose. And I do believe that having our hand held through some of this journey, I mean, if you think about it, in traditional cultures and non-Western cultures, they had a lot of rituals often around this process where, there's the red tent concept where women all congregated in the tent or equivalent at certain times of the month, particularly the new moon, and chatted about women's business and got to share. Or there may be, in traditional cultures also, women would sit around and craft. They would knit or sew, not cross-stitch, the patchwork quilting. This would bring women together to talk, and they would share. There'd be the older woman and the teenage girl, and they would share stories. And we're disconnected from that. And so some of the things that we do through these webinars and circles and so on are really about reconnecting with that. So the Kickstart package includes a thorough investigation of your specific situation, so it's obviously very unique to you. Comprehensive testing that's appropriate for you, pathology testing through your doctor ideally, live blood analysis if you're in the local area here. We use other things if it's on an online consultation. Obviously a dietary assessment, because most of us think we're healthy, but it's always good to determine, are you having enough fat? Are you having enough protein? Are you having perhaps too many sugary things? Symptom assessment, because that gives away a lot. Your symptoms are a language speaking to you and to others who can interpret it, what's going on in your body. And then obviously other functional testing can be ordered for you. They're the ones that you have to pay extra for. A treatment plan designed for you based on your results, so you can move forward knowing what to do and how to do it. So that's over about sort of a 5 or 6 week period. And 3 sessions, 3 lifestyle coaching naturopathic sessions, an initial testing and a follow-up. And that's all about, there's a 75-minute initial, the testing one, 90 to 120 minutes, or it can be 2 hours long sometimes, and then a follow-up 60-minute treatment plan. So all of that's valued at $550 and more if I add in, a follow-up that I do and the other support that you get and the documents that you receive and so much more. So it's really valued at way more than $550. But I have a very special price for you ladies, and that's $497. And that's because you're here on this webinar with me. All right, just something for you to think about as we go through some more dietary and lifestyle recommendations. Fats, much maligned, super, super important, especially if you're sugar addicted. If you crave carbs all the time and you really can't get rid of that craving, it's very possible that you're low in fats and we need to eat more fats. So number one, avoid industrialized fats. So that means margarine, that means canola oil, that means rice bran oil, that means all the sunflower and the safflower and the processed linseed, all those oils that are highly refined, highly polyunsaturated, which means they pretty much go rancid very quickly once they're exposed to light and air. They oxidize, and they're not, you're meant to eat the whole seed somehow, not the oil. Saturated fat supports steroidal hormone production, and that could be in the form of butter or ghee, or I got a list here, whole eggs, whole meats with fat, fish. Fish is a little polyunsaturated, but beautiful fats. Sardines and herring, and obviously eggs are amazing. So nuts and seeds and avocados also a really important part of that. Protein, often we're deficient in protein, we don't even realize it, but protein and a full range of amino acids, really important for detoxification and for enzymes. So our best form of protein is clean, pasture-raised or grass-fed animal protein. That's my highest recommendation for most women. Not everyone. Some people are inclined more towards vegetarian. That's completely fine. It's just a little harder. Avoid the isolates. So protein powders do not make up for it. They do not. I'm sorry, but a whole egg is an infinitely better substitute or protein source than an isolate like whey or soy protein or pea protein. Oh, there's tons of proteins these days. Avoid fake foods, absolutely 100%. There's mostly chemicals in them. Eat skin on the chicken. Yay! Bone broths are amazing, even though they're liquid. They're liquid protein, and for someone who's got gut issues, it's an absolute no-brainer. Bone broths are amazing. You can do fish ones, meat ones, chicken ones, and you can do vegetable broths as well, but they don't have the protein in it. So that's a different thing. It's beneficial for in soups and that kind of thing, but I really advocate the bone broths for people. There's got natural collagen in it, which is great for our hair and our skin. We really want beautiful skin. We want Nigella skin as much as possible. So cream, and coconut cream is good too, but cream, very clean dairy products, so it can be amazing. Learn how to properly prepare plant-based protein. So if you're more inclined towards the plant-based, then you've got to know how to look after them so that the body can absorb the nutrients in it. So that means soaking. That means sprouting some things. That means fermenting things. You can ferment grains, for example, in whey or in yogurt or in lemon juice, and they break down those anti-nutrients that can be really difficult, which is why you get the wind often with lentils and those kinds of things. They're important foods, but they need to be prepared properly. Sunshine is a massive one. Sunshine, we get these days not a lot, not nearly enough sunshine, and it's absolutely critical to have for our vitamin D, which regulates our immune system. If we don't have enough vitamin D, we might have autoimmune or underimmunity. So vitamin D is absolutely essential. It's another thing you can get tested through your doctor. I don't recommend a D supplement, a synthetic vitamin D. I do not recommend those. I might recommend a cod liver oil, but that's why I recommend butter and dairy and ghee and these kinds of things which have natural vitamin D in them. Nothing beats nature. And of course, we don't have enough, you know, all this stuff. We work indoors, we cover up, we wear sunscreen, we don't exercise outside, we exercise in the gym. And then, of course, for so many months of the year, about 5 months of the year, the sun's too low to create the UV light that we need to activate the skin to create vitamin D. So, you know, now's the time, late September and October, to start getting outside and getting a bit of sunlight on your skin. Gut health. For serotonin, as I mentioned earlier, we need good gut health to have good brain health. And we need good brain health to have healthy moods. So some of the factors affecting gut, obviously having sufficient fibre. Lots of beautiful, properly cooked vegetables, not too much raw. If you have any gut issues, cook them, and cook your fruits as well if you have gut issues. Healthy fats we've already talked about. Easily digestible protein, really important. So I just always have broths on the go. So I made leek and potato soup over the weekend, and it has chicken broth in it. I bought a ham hock because I'm going to make a pea soup, and it's absolutely divine when it's made with ham, the ham hock stock. Fermented foods and natural probiotics. Well, fermented foods are natural probiotics, but there's a whole array of things you can do, from beverages. Kombucha is a naturally fermented tea, through to yogurt and kefir and cheeses, of course, especially if they're raw organic cheeses, apple cider vinegar, you know, what else is there? Tofu, actually tofu is not fermented. Tempeh is fermented. Miso is fermented. These things regularly in the diet can be very helpful. Exercise, you already know, it's a mood elevator. It works better than antidepressants, and some research has been shown to be better than antidepressants at elevating the mood. It's a serotonin or endorphin increaser. But do keep it moderate and gentle. Over-exercising elevates your cortisol, which puts you into famine mode, and that will put weight on or make it difficult for you to lose weight. So do not overdo the exercise. Incorporate some yin yoga into the mix so that you're having something balanced about flexibility as well. And yin is feminine. Feminine, we want to feel feminine and embrace our feminine essence at this time of our life more than ever. And so, you know, the yang, power, you know, even power yoga or HIIT, F45, all that kind of stuff, it can be fine in moderation, but it can also be very cortisol increasing, and that does not serve us. Phytoestrogens in the diet, I think this is our last point here. Phytoestrogens are amazing. Phytoestrogens are not estrogen. Phytoestrogens bind to estrogen receptors and help balance our hormones. They help bring it up if it's low, and they help bring it down if it's high, unnaturally high. So phytoestrogens are super, super fabulous. And in my opinion, not contraindicated in certain conditions where estrogen's meant to be minimized. But that's a whole nother story. Here we go. How we find them, they're in plant sources. So your isoflavones are found in soy and legumes like chickpeas and alfalfa. Then you get coumestans, and they are found in sprouts. And then you get lignans, and they are found in grains and seeds and vegetables. So a whole, I mean, you can find more information on that online if you like, but if you eat a whole array of plant substances, then you should get nice levels of phytoestrogens and other plant nutrients in your diet. There you go. Oh my gosh, you're still with me. Thank you very much, everyone. We're about to come to a close, but before we do, I want to, just once more remind you of my offer, and that's the Lifestyle Coaching Kickstart Package, 3 sessions for $4.97. Super bonus offer is if you purchase before 5 p.m. tomorrow, this is what I'm giving you. An iridology assessment, and I can do that online or face-to-face, and so that's a complimentary 15-minute iridology assessment as a bonus. That's if you purchase my little package there before 5 p.m. tomorrow. How do you buy? Well, you might like to take a photo of this link. I've just set this up today, so I haven't, I've tested it, but it's not idiot proof. I've sort of gone the whole thing. So if you have any trouble, then email me or pop something in the chat here and I will call you. Pop your name in the chat with your phone number and I will call you tomorrow morning. All right. Every woman's menopause is unique. Every woman's menopause is an endocrine challenge. Every woman. It's the nature of it. It's stressful. Even if it's just stress causing adrenal over output, then it's how well you handle that. And every woman's menopause is a call to spirit, which is the more heart-based part of menopause. And that's my coach, my mentor's name, Nancy Evelyn. I added the last one. That's me, actually. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to take myself out of screen share now and just check in with you all. Check in with chat and see if I can answer any questions. I would love you to type them in, though, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm going to save the chat and post some of the answers to your questions on the Facebook group that I'm in. If you're not already aware, I'm in. I have a Facebook group called Wildly Healthy Women, aimed at perimenopause, so you can pop there. All right, let me just have a check. Which herbs should you avoid if you have high blood pressure? Licorice is the main one. And there are a few others which aren't coming to mind, but the main one's licorice. It does elevate because it messes with your potassium. Hydrolyzed collagen powders are good to supplement with. Why? Okay, yeah, hydrolyzed collagen powders. Yep, they probably come from broth or something like that, perhaps. Personally, I like to keep it all in food. Thank you, guys. If you have to go, then you're welcome to do that. Why do we get itchy skin, especially at night? Oh my gosh, that's one of the symptoms that I've had, and I actually don't know. It is related to estrogen withdrawing from the body, changing the cell, but I don't know exactly why that ends up as itchiness. It can be related to dry skin because the skin can dry out if you have dryness, and therefore moisturizing with coconut oil or something like that can be really helpful. But don't know the exact mechanism. I mean, I would go to bed like this and I'd be like scratching and scratching. It's unbelievably uncomfortable. Alexis says, that was fabulous. Great information, very supportive. Thank you so much, Alexis. You're welcome. Melissa, thank you. See you soon. Hopefully all is well with you. Ruan, thanks. Very informative, very informative. Cool. All right, ladies. Bye. Yeah, take care and stay in touch if you'd like some assistance with anything. And look out for my next one, which I'm going to repeat this one in a few weeks. But my next one is menopause and weight gain. I'm going to specifically be talking about weight gain, and that's at the end of October. You can go in and book. It's already in there. It's the number 2 one. So the number 2 M word. So go in and check it out. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you would like to stay on to personally chat with me once everyone's gone, then you can do that. I'm going to stay here and sit quietly for a minute. Otherwise, and I'm going to stop record.